Good morning, Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited fans, and welcome to a day that's trying to be sunny in Retford. It's trying. Okay, I've just basically I'm between jobs. The Facile Vega, the faceless Vega, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it faceless. I assume it's an auto spell correction error. Is refusing to start. I think the battery that is new. I think I just left the battery lead loose, so it's flattened the battery. Try to start it. It fired, but it didn't start. But it is a very, very Baltically cold day today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge the battery up on that. You'll notice the X19 is not in here. That's gone for the old re-MOT of truth. And the Rover is now sat here. I'm just in the process of making some door pins for that, but I'll show you that when I get on with it. So I can do the sill on that side. It can be done there where it doesn't have to be moved out of the way all the time because it's not going to be in the way over there. So in the meantime, just because I haven't done the pins for the Rover, I can whip the doors off that later. I thought I'd just have an hour stripping a few bits and pieces off the Rover V8 or however long it takes. So figured I'd just show you me pulling down a Rover V8, quite honestly. There's not a lot to it. I'm going to start with the intake manifold and basically take any bolts out I can get out because obviously it's been sat a long time and they get a little bit of dissimilar metal corrosion in, as similar to Stag heads, obviously. What I usually do, crack them with the old torque arm, the cracker bar, and then just whip them out with the Ugga Dugga gun. My little Ugga Dugga gun, I've said it many times before, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, it's only 3/8. It's a snap-on 3/8. It's past its best because I've knocked 7 bells out of it. So it probably only does about 30, 40 foot-pounds of torque. It's not break anything. If I did your wheel nuts up with it, you'd be upset because they'd fall off. So, so basically, I'm going to, as I say, start at the intake manifold, ignition leads, things like that, exhaust manifolds off, basically with the upshot of getting the heads off. May or may not get that done today, but here we go. So you'll just see me crack these bolts down here and these ones at the back. Probably should have explained this first. To get the intake manifold off a Rover V8, these are 3/8 UNC, so they are 9/16 AF heads all the way down, okay? The only ones that will give you any grief are the ones under the carburetors. This one you can get with a rat. You'll notice I'm using a long extension bar, as you can see. This one here you can get to. The one on the other side, I think you can get to. I think the only one that's difficult is that one. You may or may not be able to see through the accelerator linkage, but you can either pop the linkage off or do it with a spanner with the rocker box cover off. That's easy. Valve covers if you're an American. So what I'm doing is basically, I jumped into it a little bit without thinking to take these pipes off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whip all these pipes off and all the other little jars that are in the way. These have all cracked all the way down, actually. This one's giving me a bit of grief, so I'm going to spray a little bit of plus gas on that and work it back and forth a bit, because obviously it's a lot easier if it does come out on block, you know, a hole. Things like this little bracket, they won't be going back on, but I will obviously keep them for now, just in case. That's for the original air filter box, which we don't have anyway. We're going to go back with K&Ns, I would imagine, but I may actually put a different carb on it. Excuse me, so we'll see at the time. This pipe here is a air bleed, so that's the top pipe off the coolant system. So basically that's to stop you getting an airlock in here. Sometimes you don't need it, but we'll see on that when we get there. I can't remember if the car has a header tank on it. If it does, that'll connect up beautifully, actually. So I've always found my Rovers run a lot better with a header tank fitted. So yeah, back to it. Right, So I've got the intake manifold off, took the liberty of just looking at what I need to do to take the alternator off. That bracket will have to come off, obviously, if the heads need machining work, but I'll take it off anyway because it's 2 bolts, so who's worrying. I've just whipped the distributor out. So you'll notice the distributor here, just to give you a bit of detail. This is an SD1 front cover. I now know that because this drive here has this part on. That drives the oil pump. As you can see there, it's like it's a female. It's like it fits over a screwdriver drive, which you won't be able to see in the bottom of there, maybe, but it is. If you have a P6 or an early Range Rover or anything like that, or a smaller front cover, it won't have that on. This won't be drilled here, and that will have a, I think it has a roll pin through there that drives in a female end on that end. So basically the direct opposite of this. That's really good news because that's an SD1 front. This has been changed at some time. It's obviously had a P6 one on because somebody's taken the roll pin and ground the ends off. The roll pin should actually be protruding that about 1/8 of an inch each side, but we're not worrying too much about that. Clamps come out, again, 3/8 UNC, no problem at all. I've got to say, and I shouldn't mention it at this point, but everything's looking quite good. So the carbs are off. We did break a bolt in the head here. You can see it's really corroded. So I'll have to find some way of getting that out. I'll probably just weld something on it, or I'll get it drilled out by my engineer. It's not a big deal, quite honestly. I've done them before, and I do have a helicoil kit, I think, for 3/8 UNC. The inlet ports are looking pretty clean. I don't know what the exhaust side is like, but I'm not really too worried about the exhaust side. So the next thing to take out is to look in the valley. The valley is a good sort of indicator of how good or bad the engine is inside. There's 2 1/2 inch here, AF headed 5/16 UNCs there. You take those off and these clamps off. Obviously these I'll be blasting and spraying before they go back on. This is an original style pressed tin intake manifold gasket, and obviously valley cover. And it's still got some rat poo in it, which I'm going to vacuum out before I go any further, which is pretty vile. Rocker box covers need to come off. Valve covers, if you speak Americanese. This needs to come off, really. I might leave the exhaust manifolds on because it just makes it easier to handle the heads when they come off as well. But they're pretty easy to get off, and I'll show you that in a sec. Right, I've paused you there. This is like Christmas. Honest to God, it is like brand new in there. Now, when I say brand new, that's kind of a a misleading comment. It isn't like brand new in here at all. It's worn out on the camshaft and the lifters, the cam followers. However, Americans say lifters, and because these are based on an American engine, I kind of divert to that. However, what I have to say is that valley is super clean. There is some residue in there, but I'm not going to lie. I bet you if I took the top off my 4.6, it wouldn't look like that. Everything's free. Everything's working. You can see the camshaft is showing signs of wear here and here. In my experience, Rover V8s are usually worn out on the back cam lobes. It won't always be discernible to look at. But when you actually take them out, you can see it. Although that one doesn't look too bad, actually. That one doesn't look bad. There's a little bit of varnish on here. It'll probably need a new camshaft. I'd be surprised if it didn't, but it really isn't bad. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's not like freshly rebuilt. There is, it's obviously tarnish and muck and filth in there. But actually, it's significantly better than I expected. So I've taken the alternator bracket off as well. This should be a 5/16 UNC. Somebody had forced a metric in there. Weirdly, an M8. It is close, but it isn't the same thread pitch. This is 3/8 UNC again for the alternator bracket. As I said in a previous video, that's an MGB alternator bracket. So that's all, yeah, we're looking pretty good in there. The next thing to look at is take the valve covers off, the rocker box covers off, and start to release the heads, obviously. I don't know whether I'll take the liberty of putting the push rods in order at this point, purely because if it does all turn out to be all right, I'm a little bit nervous of risking rebuilding the engine and then putting a camshaft back in and lifters and push rods. If there's any wear there for what that would cost to replace, it's probably just better to replace it anyway. I'm going to take these off and then check the actual rockers in there, because the rocker arms do tend to show wear as well, which is what leads to low oil pressure in Rover V8s. But I'll tell you what happens there in a second. So, valve covers, they're all unscrewed now. They have some small Phillips, I say small, the quarter UNC, but they're actually use a ginormo screwdriver like that. So those are now all unscrewed. Just going to use that as a bit of leverage. And off we go. These are usually cork gaskets. More modern engines you can get now rubber gaskets, which are supposed to be a lot better. Oops, completely forgot the old Phillips in there. The dipstick, and it unscrewed. I think that is the only one I've ever had of those that actually unscrewed. Do you know that? Yeah, it's just a self-tapping screw, but they're usually stuck like poo to a blanket. So if we whip that off now, that's all. I mean, that all is all so clean inside. It's not like brand new. It's not brand new. It's not rebuilt either, but it's in such good condition. It's obviously had regular oil changes, I'll say that for nothing. Bob those on the floor. Now you'll see the valve springs there. Those are single valve springs. SD1s have single valve springs. P6s have double valve springs, but they have smaller valves and smaller combustion chambers. So although you get a higher compression ratio with a P6 head, you get higher flow rates with an SD1 head, so they make more power, basically. That said, the smaller valves and the double valve springs and all that will allow you to have more torque. So it depends what you're doing, really. If you're running in a Range Rover or a Land Rover or something like that, and you need torque, or if you're pulling a big old caravan with your Range Rover, then you need the torque. But either way, now I won't be able to feel any play in these, obviously, because the push rods are still in there. But we need to take these off first, these rocker arms. What happens in here, these wear quite profusely due to, well, age, usually. Mine were on my old car, had loads of play in them. Now, that doesn't make a huge amount of difference to the engine running. In fact, truth be told, it doesn't make any difference to the engine running, because if they're tight, they're more likely to bind and stick as they expand. And it ran absolutely perfectly, but the oil pressure was very minimal, even despite a new oil pump. This has the bigger oil pump, the SD1 oil pump, which will make 55 PSI on this. The bigger gears as well, so they turn more volume of oil. But what happens is you get a lot of oil flow through here. Now, I was told this by a Rover expert many, many years ago, and it always stuck in my mind. He said, if you've got a lot of side-to-side play, and I don't mean this way, I mean rock in the rocker arm, then you'll be losing all your oil pressure. He said the way to check, and this is, you can do this, although it is a messy operation, is to take the valve cover off and run the engine. He said, now when it's running, there should just be a mist of oil in there, around there, you know, just a tiny mist coming out from the rockers. And that's it. It should never overflow here. You should just get a small amount of oil that runs back down here, and back through the return, back to the engine, and through, obviously, the push rod holes and into the valley. Now mine, when I took the valve covers off, the rocker box covers off, fired it up, within about 30 seconds, it was on, the oil was overflowing down over the exhaust manifolds, headers and everything. It was just a disaster. Now I did, when I rebuilt my engine, I put all new rockers in. Where they were made, I don't know. I'm not about to say they were made in a country that makes shonky gear, but you know where I'm talking about. However, the play in them was probably about the same as the ones I took off. So my dad made me some oil restrictors to go in the oil feeds just to try. Worst case scenario was it locked up solid and made a mess and wrecked the engine, but we tried it anyway. and he made them out of, the oil feeds are in the rocker pedestals. I'll show you that when I take them off. They were very much like a MIG welder tip, made out of brake pipe, which is 5mm 3/16, and he riveted the end over till there was just a tiny hole in the end, and it took a couple of attempts to practice it. But what happened was that restricted the oil feed to the top. It was still getting plenty of oil in, I can assure you, but it wasn't overflowing. It was still getting up to here. And it instantly added 10 psi to the oil. So I was getting about 45 psi idle when it was cold, and probably about a maximum when it was warm of 45, 50 psi. I did do other things to raise the oil pressure in the end, but what I found was it just increased the oil pressure, oil temperature, at which point you lost all your oil pressure. So it didn't help. So you're better not to increase the oil pressure significantly. 55 is more than enough. Anywho, I'll carry on taking that off. I'll whip the other rocker cover off while you're here. I've got to stop here and say, this is really funny, I think. They actually marked the other rocker cover offside, but you'll notice it was positioned on the near side, and then they'd cut the top off for the to clear the bonnet. Well, let me in on a big secret here. You can put that one on that side, and this is at the back, and you don't need to do that. But anywho, c'est la vie. This one's a little bit muckier in there. There's a bit of Black Death, but nothing, not the plague, I hasten to add. It's what you call when you get a carbon build-up. There's a bit of carbon in there. But for an engine that's 40 years old, I don't consider that bad at all. Once it's been tanked and cleaned, or even just washed out, that'll come out lovely, that. It's not dried on crud. Those are significantly better. If I just whip you around to my engine, which is over here on the ramp, forgot that completely, and look in my valve covers, I think mine are a lot worse, if I'm really honest. Excuse the fuel pack. Mine have got significant amount of carbon build up there from lack of oil changes. So yeah, I consider this, for an old engine that's from the early 80s, I think that's in very, very good nick. And I suspect it's been rebuilt quite recently. So yeah, next step, rockers off, strip the other odds and sods off the heads. There's nothing major on this, that's on the block. I'll take the lifting eye off and then just whip the heads off and have a look in there. I think you'd probably be establishing by now, if you've watched any of the Stag work I've done, that these are an awful lot easier to strip down than a Stag engine. So that's the rockers off. As you can see, it's just 8, 9, 16 bolts, but they are a lot tighter. You can see here, this is the oil feed hole. There's one at each end. There's one there. It's not easy to see because it's all covered in muck and clean, but there's the other oil feed hole. So these will feed up through the rocker pedestal into the rocker shaft, and then into the rockers individually, and what's left sprays over. The valves feel pretty good. There's not a huge amount of wear on them. They're not mushroomed over particularly. A little bit maybe, but not significant. It's not like a high mileage engine. Those ones seem good too. You can see now they are single springs, and there are no seals on the inlet valve guides, inlet and exhaust valve guides. Obviously only fit them on inlets usually. Now there is a retrofit to do that, which I will be putting on this engine when it's built to stop it burning oil. They will burn oil down the guides, even if the guides are immaculate, because there's no seals on them. So there is a retrofit, and I believe they are Vauxhall Manta seals, but I would have to check that. I bought some off eBay many moons ago for my engine. You can get nitrile ones as well for Range Rovers, I think they are. The early ones, you needed to machine the valve guides, or if you put the, oh gosh, I've forgotten the name now, bronze, phosphor bronze guides in from real steel. They were already machined for the later guides, later seals, but the new ones you can just put on, and I put them on inlet and exhaust, and on my race engine it was absolutely fine. I say race engine, it wasn't, it wasn't a 10,000 horsepower affair. I made sort of 250, but it still took them lovely. It never had an issue with them over years and years. So, you're perfectly safe to do that, in my opinion, but I accept no responsibility if it all goes pear-shaped. It's your choice at the end of the day, not mine. I'm not telling you to do it. So, yeah, so they're ready to come off now. Apart from that, I'm bleeding quite profusely. I'm quite aware that I've been touching rat guano. And I don't like rat poo. I have a real issue with it because I know it's not healthy. So next job, heads off, timing cover off, and then we're pretty much stripped, really. Just got to take the sump off. Lovely. Right, first thing you'll notice is I've gone to the Big Daddy breaker bar. 5/8 socket, and I'm going to take these off diametrically, so I'm going to start in the middle and work down. What I'll do is I'll go 1, 2, show you on that side where you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, they should be, I think they're about 60 foot-pounds, these, when they're tightened. They shouldn't be catastrophically bad, certainly aren't. I think it might be 55 actually, judging by that one. So, click. Again, I only loosen each one. Not doing the whole lot. I know taking them off probably doesn't matter diametrically, but it makes me feel better. So, to be quite honest with you, it doesn't take any more time, and if it saves any issues, then I think it's well worth it. Right. Because the exhaust manifold's fitted, I'm going to have to take that manifold gasket off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack these other ones. Crack these other ones off on here. Then I'll go back and take the exhaust manifolds off. Need an extension bar really for those. Right, so change of plan. So you'll see there that I've got the exhaust manifolds off. I've taken the power steering pump off, which wasn't a big deal. These are going to break, I'll guarantee that. These long bolts through here, they're a 5/16 UNC, and they always snap any bloody way, so I'm not too concerned about those. I've undone the head on the other side. Obviously, I've done these ones in here, I think. Did I? No, I didn't. Okay, so now I don't usually push away from myself to do this. Now, there's 3 rows of bolts on an early engine like this. There you go. These are going fine. The outer row of bolts can actually be left out if you choose so, but I always felt like they put them there for a reason, but my engine hasn't got them. Being a later engine, they did away with them. On the grounds of they didn't help particularly, I think. The saying is that when you torque the in ones, the outer ones, and then the outer ones, the middle ones, but they're not really in the middle, then what happens is it all rocks. And it pulls the intake, the head gasket up a little bit and can lead to head gasket failure. Now, in all the years I've been doing it, talking it to factory specs, and I mean, my engine got absolutely thrashed within an inch of its life, literally, constantly. It was a daily driver. It did a lot of work. I only had a head gasket issue when I pumped significant amounts of nitrous oxide through it. And when I say significant, if you're watching this in America, 150 horsepower won't sound a lot, but it is for a Rover, which only makes 150 horsepower standard, and it was a standard cast piston engine. It wasn't a fire breathing monster. So I'm just going to rattle these out, break them all down, rip them out with the Ugga Dugga gun. Right, okay. That's all crap. Has a one straight hole to that's 76. Screw top, take place. Take one. Two out, 1 6 all. You see, now Right, so this is going to raise some pulses, but this is why a Rover V8 is probably better engineered, certainly in the cylinder head department, than a Triumph Stag V8. I know that's harsh, but it's true. There were some design flaws in the heads. We all know it, really. You can ignore it, you can lie about it, you can say what you like. But the fact is, there are some issues. Now, you'll just notice how quickly, obviously I'll have speeded it up, but I have literally cracked these with a cracker bar, run them out with the Ugga Dugga, apart from that one that I forgot to loosen with the cracker bar, and they came straight out. Now, if you look at the head bolt, I'm hoping you can see it there. Can you see here where my finger is? It's a wasted stem right to the thread, look. So the thread goes into the block, that locates the top of the head, and that clears the rest of the engine so that nothing sticks, okay? Those came straight out, no issue whatsoever. Now, I aren't blaming Triumph or the Triumph engineers because they probably wanted something like that with the head studs. However, in some sort of cost-cutting exercise that I think British Leyland were involved by then, so no doubt they did that cost-cutting exercise, they didn't get that. They got it on the outer bolts, but not on the inner studs, which is where the problem starts. Even that bolt, that's the modified bolt that has the dipstick clip, that even has it, look. The washer locates onto it, wasted stem. Not one of those is stuck. Not a single solitary one. Out of this entire strip here, and bear in mind this engine's been stood a fair old while, the yellow Stag was still running. If you haven't seen the video, please take a look if you want. I've broken one bolt there, which I'll get out with the welder, no doubt. I'll certainly have a go. It was moving. And one here somewhere, can't even see it now. Oh no, it's one on the other side, sorry. One of the exhaust studs, it started to unwind and then decided to break off. Now, there, look. So when these goes in for checking and machining, I'll just get him to whip that out. But to be honest with you, I could probably get that with the stud extractor, or I can just weld a nut to it and that'll come out anyway because the heat will crack it loose. It's not made out of better quality materials. It's just a little bit better thought out here and there. You can jump up and down and say, rubbish, you're wrong. But trust me, I've worked on both these engines for long enough to know the truth. Also, don't start jumping up and down with the Buick derived blah, 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 because they were made in the UK. The idea was Buick, but Buick thought they were so bad, they sort of ignored them. Now, going back on track, I'm going to whip this cylinder head off here. Now, I have been to this stage before with Rover heads, having said all what I've just said, and couldn't get the blooming things off. So, I can't remember if they're doweled or not onto the block. I think they are, but let's give them a tug. Oh, straight off, easy peasy. They weigh literally next to nothing. And there you go. There's the combustion chamber. Okay. Some carbon build-up, but you know, what do you expect? It's an old engine. Bit of fungus around there, but nothing major. No deterioration to water channels, just a bit of muck in there, but then it has been stood a long time. The engine was drained. As you can see with the Rover head, you can pick it up with one hand. But yeah, that's very, very good in there. So, taking the original head gasket off. These are the tin gaskets, so these may actually be the ones that came out of the factory, believe it or not. Unlikely, I appreciate, but they could be. So that's good news. Obviously, they're not going back on. And as you can see, the pistons are dirty but fine. Sorry about the dipstick. There's not a lot I can do about that. There's no wear in it, hardly. Usually get more of a step at the top. There's a tiny bit of carbon in, but that is really, really good. Again, I'll have the machine shop take a look at it because obviously now is the time if it does need any machining, but there's a bit more in that one. I might need to just clean that out and take a check on that. I'm hoping these are standard size pistons. They look like standards to me. Because if it does need a rebar, really 20,000 is about as far as you want to go. But there you go, easy as that. I'll whip the other head off just to show you how easy it was. Hopefully you can see there. Hopefully there's no nightmares in here. Might be, you never know. Oh, sorry, left a bolt in because I couldn't remember if they were doweled. They aren't. Oh yes they are, sorry. Yes they are, 2 dowels there. Didn't want them to fall off for quite obvious reasons. That one's just in loose. Usually I'd stand the engine up, but so you can see what I'm doing. This was just easier, and yeah, she's loose and she's off, just like that. That might have been a bit of gasket failure on that one, but nothing major, no burning. Those will clean up lovely. Even some water left in that one, although it may be rainwater. Yeah, that is, there's wear in that one. Yeah, there's a little bit of wear in that one, but nothing too bad. May hone and rebuild. May need a bar. We'll see what the man with the plan has to say about that. But yeah, I've got to say, actually, all joking aside now, the main thing for this engine was that it wasn't rusted in the bars, and I knew it turned over, so I knew the bars were still good. Because obviously if it's 20 thou bar, you don't want to be going a lot more. There is some wear in there, but there's also some carbon. So we might just see what that needs. Obviously the guy who does my machining will take a close look at it and measure it up for me and see what it needs. If it doesn't need a set of pistons, I won't put them in. I'll just hone it and put a set of rings in. If I'm going to put mains and big ends in, I would like to see what bar we're at. If we're 20 thou over, that's not an issue, but I think it's more difficult getting pistons, as I recall. Now, I put high compression pistons in mine, and they couldn't go over 20 thou, so maybe it's just the high compression. I can't remember off the top of my head. So there's no markings particular. Well, there are markings on the piston, but nothing that tells me what size it is. That tends to mean that they are standard bar. It does feel very good on the bar. There's a tiny bit of wear, but it's negligible. So until I get the sump off and have a look inside the bottom end, see what the bar's like at the bottom, it's hard to say, quite honestly. I need him bar gauging, and I don't have one of those because I don't do that sort of work. So although I do engines, I don't do rebars and stuff. So, you know, the machine shop will have to do that. I will point out at this point, these are P6 engine mounts. SD1 ones are very different. This L-shaped bracket is the Stag part that somebody's weirdly welded up and made a horrible mess of there. I think these should be the other way around with the L at the front, and they will be when the engine goes back in, because that will give a lot more clearance. But these look like, I don't know, they don't look like standard pistons to me. They look like the high compression pistons, which gave 9.75 to 1 with an SD1 head. They're actually the ones from the P6B Sport version. That 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, but when you put a SD1 head on, it gives you 9.75. So yeah, just the front cover to get off now. That's gonna be more of an issue. Just got to get the big ugga dugger, the big old airline ugga dugger, to get the front pulley off. So I'll do that. We'll have a look at the bottom end and see what it looks like in there. I'm not taking the crank out today. I really need to be getting on with other stuff at this point. I've had a few hours on this now, and I don't want to be wasting all my day on it. So, and I've got the Fiat to pick up and stuff. So, yeah, so far so good. So what? Right, I'm going to wind this video up here. Purely because it's not like there's a major issue or anything, but purely because that's such good news, and that's kind of as far as I expected to get today anyway. And I don't know how long the video is going on for. If it gets like an hour and a half, it's just pointless. So I'm going to edit it up and try and cut out some of the waffling that's going on. But yeah, good few signs. To sum up, pistons look good, bars look good, may just hone and clean. Machine shop will tell me that. That is definitely an SD1 front timing cover with the bigger oil gears in it, the bigger oil pump gears. That's really good news. We know the water pump is buggered anyway, so we're not too worried about that. Just need to get the front pulley off, and then I can worry about getting that out. I think these bolts will snap, but we'll be all right with them. The heads are off, the intake's off. Once the front cover and the timing pulley is off, whip her over, have a look in the bottom end, but I'll do that with you so you can watch that being done as well. Obviously underneath, just to draw your attention again, this is an SD1 sump. As you can see, it's a rear bowl sump, so it's very flat at the front. The rear has this part here that bolts to the bell housing. Obviously, I won't be using that because I might actually, because I'm putting a Borg Warner 65 bell housing on there. So I need to get one of those bought. But there's no desperate rush whilst I'm waiting for the engine to have any machining work done. But yeah, absolutely fantastic news. I did suspect the engine was going to be better than it looked. If these are standard bar, that's great. Somebody stamped some stuff into them. I have no idea why, but they look good. I'm hoping just to get away with a hone and new rings. That'd be great for the customer and a lot less work for me and a lot quicker to turn it around, which is also good for me. But I need to get it cleaned and finish stripping everything down, have a look at the camshaft and stuff, attempt to get these followers out because they're usually a nightmare because they get all varnish around the bottoms. Look, yeah, they're stuck. Ugh. once the cam's out. I think you can bob them downwards. As I say, it's always the back ones that give the trouble. But it will need a camshaft. I'm going to put a camshaft in it regardless. They're always worn out. Unless that's like brand new and I take it out and something special, then it's going back. It's not going back in. I'd put new followers in regardless, lifters. So yeah, I'm going to wind it down. I'm going to have my dinner and I'm going to come back to that another day. I do need to play around, do need to get the Vega going today so I can run it up and tell the customer it is finished. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to see the next video, all the other videos. Take a look through my back catalogue. There's a lot of them. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please put a like on there. Thanks a lot. Laters.